I thought my husband was just working late, until I discovered his secret family and a double life that shattered everything. I am a 34-year-old female. It started innocently enough. My husband had been putting in more hours at work over the past year. Late nights, weekend shifts, the works. He'd come home exhausted, barely able to keep his eyes open during dinner. I worried about his health, but he assured me it was just a big project that needed his attention. Once this deal goes through, things will calm down, he'd say, kissing me on the cheek before heading out the door at 6 a.m. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? But as weeks turned into months, I started noticing changes. Small things at first. A new cologne I didn't recognize, gym clothes in his car when he claimed he was too busy to work out, mysterious phone calls he'd taken another room. I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, we were happy, weren't we? Then came the night that changed everything. It was our anniversary, and I had planned a surprise dinner at home. I spent hours cooking his favorite meal, set the table with our best china, even put on the dress he loved. But 7 p.m. came and went. Then 8 p.m. By 9 p.m., I was sitting alone at the table, the candles burnt low, my calls going straight to voicemail. He stumbled in at midnight, reeking of alcohol and perfume, lost track of time at the office happy hour. He slurred, not even noticing the elaborate setup in the dining room. As he passed out on the couch, something in me snapped. The next morning, while he was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I installed a tracking app on his phone. It felt wrong, invasive, but the gnawing doubt in my stomach wouldn't let up. I needed to know the truth, whatever it was. For a week, everything seemed normal. His movements matched his stories: office, gym, the occasional client dinner. I was starting to feel guilty for doubting him. Then, on a Tuesday night when he said he had to work late, I watched in real time as his dot on the map moved in the opposite direction of his office. Heart pounding, I followed the dot to a suburban neighborhood about 30 minutes from our home. It stopped at a quaint 2-story house with a white picket fence. This had to be a mistake, right? Maybe he was meeting a client? But as hours ticked by and his dot didn't move, a sick feeling grew in my stomach. I don't know what possessed me, but I got in my car and drove. The whole way there, I tried to come up with innocent explanations. Maybe he was surprising me with a new house? Maybe it was a work retreat? Deep down, I knew I was grasping at straws. As I pulled up to the curb, I saw his car in the driveway. The house was lit up, warm and inviting. Through the large front window, I could see into what looked like a living room. And there he was, my husband, sitting on a couch. But he wasn't alone. A woman I'd never seen before sat next to him, her head on his shoulder. And playing on the floor in front of them were 2 children, a boy who looked about 5 and a little girl who couldn't have been more than 2. The world tilted on its axis. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just an affair. This was a whole other life. I must have made a noise, a gasp or a sob, because suddenly my husband looked up. Our eyes met through the window, and I saw the color drain from his face. In that moment, I knew. He knew that I knew. There was no more pretending. I don't remember driving home. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in our dark kitchen, staring at nothing. Hours passed. Around 3 a.m., I heard his key in the lock. Footsteps approached, hesitant. "I can explain," he said softly, standing in the doorway. I laughed, a hollow sound that scared even me. "Explain what?" "How you've been living a double life for God knows how long. How you have another family. Please, enlighten me." He sank into the chair across from me, his head in his hands. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never meant to hurt you." "Hurt me?" My voice rose. "You've destroyed everything we had, every memory, every moment." "It's all a lie." "No, it wasn't a lie," he insisted, reaching for my hand. I jerked away. "I love you. I've always loved you. And them, do you love them too?" His silence was answer enough. What followed was the most painful conversation of my life. The other woman, let's call her A, was a former coworker. They had a brief fling years ago, before he and I were serious. He thought it was over until I contacted him 6 years into our marriage. She was pregnant. I panicked, he said, tears streaming down his face. I knew I should tell you, but I was scared of losing you. So I convinced myself I could handle it on my own. Just child support, you know? But then I met my son, and I couldn't stay away. The more he talked, the more surreal it became. He spoke of soccer games and dance recitals, of bedtime stories and Sunday pancakes. A whole life that I knew nothing about. How could you do this to me? I whispered, my anger giving way to a bone-deep sadness. To us. He shook his head, looking lost. I don't know. I couldn't bear to hurt either of you. So I tried to keep both worlds separate. I know it was wrong, but I didn't know how to stop. As dawn broke, we were still sitting there, both emotionally exhausted. I had 1,000 questions, but one kept coming back. Does she know about me? He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. She knows I'm married. She agreed to keep it secret. The betrayal stung anew, not just from him, but from the stranger who had knowingly helped destroy my marriage. So what now? I asked, feeling hollow. Are you leaving me for them? His head snapped up. No, I don't want to lose you. I love you. I know I've messed up beyond belief, but please, give me a chance to make this right. I stared at him, this man I thought I knew better than anyone. How can you possibly make this right? He didn't have an answer. The next few weeks were a blur. I moved out, staying with a friend while I tried to process everything. My husband begged for couples therapy, swearing he'd do anything to save our marriage. But how do you rebuild trust after a betrayal of this magnitude? I found myself obsessing over A and the children. What were they like? Did the kids call him Dad? How often did he see them? The questions tormented me day and night. In a moment of weakness or perhaps clarity, I reached out to A. I half expected her to ignore me, but to my surprise, she agreed to meet. We met at a neutral coffee shop, both of us nervous and guarded. She was pretty in an understated way, nothing like the homewrecker I'd imagined. As we talked, I realized she was as much a victim in this as I was. I never wanted to break up a marriage, she said, her voice trembling. When I found out I was pregnant, I was prepared to do it alone, but he insisted on being involved, and then one thing led to another. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. She was just a woman who fell in love with the wrong man, same as me. What do you want to happen now? I asked her. She sighed, stirring her untouched coffee. Honestly, I don't know. I want my kids to have their father in their lives, but I also know what we did was wrong. I'm so sorry for the pain we've caused you. As I left that meeting, I felt a strange sense of calm. The anger and betrayal were still there, but underneath was a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. I met my husband at our home, soon to be just his, I decided. He looked hopeful when I walked in, but his face fell as I spoke. I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice steady. I can't be married to someone who could lie to me for years, who could build a whole separate life behind my back. Please, he begged, reaching for me. We can work through this, I'll do anything. I stepped back, that's just it. There's nothing you can do. The trust is gone, and without trust, what do we have? As I laid out my plans for divorce, I saw the reality of the situation finally hit him. He crumbled, sobbing apologies and promises, but it was too late, far too late. In the months that followed, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. It wasn't easy. There were days I could barely get out of bed, days I wanted nothing more than to forgive him and go back to the life I thought we had, but I knew I deserved better. I won't lie and say I'm completely healed. The betrayal left scars that may never fully fade, but I'm stronger now, more aware of my own worth. I've learned that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that set us free. As for my ex-husband, last I heard, he was trying to balance time between his two families. Part of me hopes he figures it out for the sake of those innocent children, but a bigger part of me is just grateful that I'm no longer living in the shadow of his lies. So, dear reader, if you've stuck with me through this saga, let me leave you with this. Trust your instincts. If something feels off in your relationship, don't ignore it, and remember, you deserve honesty, respect, and a love that doesn't require a tracking app to verify. If you enjoyed this tale of marital espionage and double lives, why not subscribe? I promise I won't keep any secrets from you, unlike some husbands I could mention.